Zac Efron stared at his phone screen, scrolling through apartment listings on OLX as his driver navigated through Kyiv's bustling streets. The February wind howled outside the car windows, and patches of gray snow lined the sidewalks. He'd just landed at Boryspil International Airport for his latest film project, a gritty drama about international journalists covering the region's complex political landscape. "I really want to immerse myself in the role," he explained to his agent over the phone, ignoring the exasperated sigh on the other end. "Living in some fancy hotel won't help me understand what my character goes through. I need to experience the real Kyiv." His agent's voice crackled through the speaker. "Zac, the studio booked you the Hyatt Regency. It's perfectly nice, and more importantly, it's secure. You can't just found one." Zac interrupted, his eyes lighting up at a particular listing. Spacious apartment near Pechurska metro station, recently renovated, great views of the city. "And look at that price. It's perfect. At least let me send someone to check it out first," his agent pleaded. "You don't know the city, you don't speak Ukrainian or Russian, and..." "That's exactly why I need to do this," Zac insisted, already typing out a message to the landlord through the translation feature. "My character is supposed to be a fish out of water, struggling to adapt to a new environment. This is method acting at its finest." The driver glanced at him through the rearview mirror, a knowing smile playing on his lips. He'd been assigned to Zac for the duration of the shoot and had already witnessed the actor's enthusiasm for authentic experiences during their brief drive from the airport. Within minutes, Zac received a response from the landlord, a woman named Larissa who spoke perfect English, according to her message. She could show him the apartment immediately. "Turn right here," Zac instructed the driver, pointing at his phone's map. "The apartment's just a few blocks away." They pulled up to a Soviet-era building, its facade a patchwork of satellite dishes and air conditioning units. Larissa stood at the entrance, a middle-aged woman wearing a leopard print coat and bright red lipstick. She waved enthusiastically as Zac stepped out of the car. "Welcome, welcome," she exclaimed, her accent thick but understandable. "You are American actor, yes? Very famous. My daughter loves High School Musical. Come, come, I show you best apartment in all Kyiv." Zac followed her into the building, trying not to notice how the fluorescent lights flickered in the entrance hall or how the elevator had an "out of order" sign that looked like it had been there since the fall of the Soviet Union. They climbed 6 flights of stairs, Larissa chattering the entire way about the neighborhood's amenities and the building's historic charm. As they reached the apartment door, Larissa fumbled with a set of keys that would have made a medieval jailer proud. "Just one moment," she said, jiggling the lock. "Sometimes it is little bit, how you say, temperamental." The door finally swung open with a creak that would have been right at home in a horror movie. Larissa stepped aside, gesturing grandly. "Welcome to your new home." Zac stepped inside, his Hollywood-trained smile frozen on his face as he took in his surroundings. The spacious apartment from the listing photos seemed to have shrunk considerably in real life. The ceiling was low enough that he had to duck slightly, and the walls were covered in a wallpaper pattern that could only be described as aggressive floral. But it was the kitchen that truly caught his attention, or more specifically, what was in the middle of it. "Is that..." He started, blinking rapidly to make sure he wasn't hallucinating from jet lag. "Is that a toilet? In the kitchen?" Larissa beamed. "Yes. Very convenient. You can cook and, how you say, multitask." As Zac stood there, trying to process this architectural innovation, a cold breeze hit the back of his neck. He turned around, searching for an open window, only to realize there were no windows at all. "Where are the windows?" he asked, his voice slightly higher than usual. "Windows are overrated," Larissa declared confidently. "No windows means no nosy neighbors. Plus, I come every day to ventilate. No extra charge." Zac's phone buzzed in his pocket, probably his agent calling to check on him. As he reached for it, Larissa launched into an enthusiastic explanation of the building's unique heating system and the charming neighbors who liked to practice their drum solos at 3 a.m. Standing there in the windowless apartment, with a toilet in the kitchen and the promise of daily unannounced visits from Larissa, Zac Efron began to wonder if perhaps method acting had its limits after all. But little did he know, his adventure in Kyiv real estate was just beginning. Despite every rational voice in his head screaming, "Run," Zac found himself signing a rental agreement that Larissa produced from her leopard print purse. The contract was entirely in Ukrainian, with what appeared to be hand-drawn emoji in the margins. When he asked for a translation, Larissa assured him it was just standard stuff, while making a dismissive gesture that somehow involved all of her jewelry jangling at once. "So, payment is in cash, yes?" Larissa said, holding out her hand expectantly. "First month, last month, security deposit, holiday bonus, cat tax." "Cat tax?" Zac interrupted. "I don't have a cat." "Exactly." Larissa beamed. "No cat means special no cat tax. Very exclusive." Before he could process the logic of this, his phone erupted with its 15th call from his agent. This time, he answered. "What do you mean you already signed a lease?" His agent's voice was so loud that Larissa, standing several feet away, gave a thumbs up and mouthed, "Good agent, very caring." "Listen, Mark, it's perfect for the role," Zac said, pacing the small space between the kitchen toilet and what appeared to be a shower curtain concealing something. "It's exactly what my character would experience. The confusion, the culture shock, the unique plumbing situations." "I'm sending someone to get you right now," Mark declared. "No need," Zac replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I've got this." How bad could it be? As if on cue, a thunderous boom echoed through the building, causing the aggressive floral wallpaper to vibrate. Larissa clapped her hands delightedly. "Ah, Mikola is starting early today. He is drummer in death metal band. Very talented. Usually practices only between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., but today is special treat." After Larissa finally left, though not before adding a stairwell maintenance fee and good luck charm rental to his mounting list of payments, Zac decided to settle in. He'd brought minimal luggage, embracing the lifestyle of his journalist character. The first challenge was finding somewhere to put his clothes, as the apartment's storage consisted entirely of a series of mysterious ropes hanging from the ceiling. Traditional Ukrainian closet system, Larissa had explained. Very efficient. You hang clothes like this. She had demonstrated with a complex series of knots that looked more appropriate for mountain climbing than storing shirts. As evening approached, Zac discovered that the apartment's lighting consisted of a single bulb dangling from a wire, which emitted a buzz that sounded suspiciously like the Ukrainian national anthem. He was contemplating ordering delivery when he heard a key in the lock. The door swung open to reveal Larissa, now wearing a different but equally dramatic leopard print ensemble. "Just checking ventilation," she announced, striding in with a small electric fan that looked like it had survived several wars. "Also, brought you housewarming gift." She thrust a jar into his hands. Inside was something that might have once been a vegetable, floating in an ominously cloudy liquid. "My grandmother's special recipe," she said proudly. "Pickled, well, no English word. Good for digestion, bad for memories." Before Zac could respond, she had plugged in the fan, using an adapter that appeared to be held together with chewing gum, opened a panel in the ceiling he hadn't noticed before, and was waving the fan at it enthusiastically. 5 minutes of fresh air, then close panel, she instructed. Otherwise, neighbor's cat might fall through. Again. As if to emphasize her point, a distinct meowing could be heard from somewhere above. "But I thought there was a no-cat tax," Zac said weakly. Larissa winked. "No cat for you. Other cats, very different story. Speaking of stories." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Wait until you hear about apartment's ghost. very famous ghost. Used to be tax collector. Now haunts people who don't pay proper no-cat fees. With that cryptic warning, she was gone, leaving Zac alone with the buzzing light bulb, the whirring fan, Mikola's death metal drumming, and the distinct feeling that his method-acting commitment might have gone too far. He looked at the jar in his hands, then at the kitchen toilet, then at the ceiling panel where he could still hear feline movement. Somewhere in the building, someone began playing what sounded like a kazoo version of Breaking Free from High School Musical. Well, he said to himself, at least it'll make for a good story. He had no idea just how right he was, or what the next day would bring, including the mysterious case of the disappearing kitchen wall, the unexpected visit from the building's self-proclaimed unofficial interior decorator, and the incident with the time-traveling babushka from apartment 13B.
Tell us in the comments what part of this story impressed you the most. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the world of incredible events.
Zac awoke to the sound of hushed whispers and what seemed like furniture being dragged across the floor. For a moment, he lay perfectly still on his foldable bed, which Larissa had proudly introduced as Soviet space program technology, very advanced, sometimes closes by itself, trying to convince himself he was still dreaming. He wasn't. Turning on his phone's flashlight, he discovered that the kitchen wall, the one with the particularly aggressive flowers in its wallpaper pattern, had disappeared entirely. In its place stood three elderly women in colorful headscarves, discussing something in rapid-fire Ukrainian while measuring the space with yarn. "Good morning," the shortest of the three called out cheerfully in accented English when she noticed him. "I am Baba Valentina, unofficial interior decorator of building. These are my associates, Baba Luda and Baba Natalia. We are here for mandatory feng shui adjustment." "Mandatory, what?" Zac managed, still trying to process the fact that an entire wall had vanished. "Where's the wall?" "Walls are very flexible in this building," Baba Valentina explained, waving her hand dismissively. "Sometimes they go for walk. Usually they come back. Usually." "Like ex-husband," Baba Luda added with a knowing nod. "But better dressed," Baba Natalia concluded. Before Zac could formulate a response to this architectural development, his phone rang. It was Mark, his agent, again. "Zac, please tell me you've come to your senses and you're checking into the Hyatt today," Mark pleaded. "Actually, funny story about that," Zac began, watching as the three babushkas started hanging strings of dried herbs from his ceiling ropes. "The apartment is redecorating itself?" "What?" "Well, one of the walls decided to take a walk, according to the building's unofficial interior decorator and her associates, who are currently," he paused as Baba Valentina pressed something into his free hand. "Who are currently giving me what appears to be a protective amulet made of garlic and old Soviet subway tokens." "Very important," Baba Valentina nodded sagely. "Keeps away evil spirits and tax collectors." "Same thing, really." Mark was silent for so long that Zac checked to see if the call had dropped. Finally, his agent spoke. "Zac, I say this with love, what the actual?" He was interrupted by a loud crash from above, followed by the distinct sound of a cat yowling and what might have been a kazoo rendition of "We're All in This Together." "That would be Boris," Baba Luda explained. "He teaches musical appreciation to neighborhood cats. Very cultural program." "Very controversial program," Baba Natalia added. "Some cats prefer classical. Cause many arguments at building committee meetings." Just then, Larissa burst through the door, today sporting a tiger print jumpsuit that somehow sparkled despite the minimal lighting. "Ah, good. Babushka Brigade is already here," she exclaimed. "Did they tell you about wall situation?" "Very normal, very traditional." "Now, about morning ventilation," she stopped, noticing the hanging herbs. "Oh no, no, no. Dill must face north-northwest. Otherwise, how can we protect against Thursday ghost?" "Thursday ghost?" Zac echoed weakly. Yes, very different from Monday Ghost. Much more fashionable. Speaking of which, Larissa rummaged in her sequined fanny pack and pulled out another contract. We need to discuss ghost insurance premium. Very reasonable rate, covers up to 3 paranormal incidents per week, not including musical hauntings or time-traveling babushkas. Time traveling? Oh yes, Baba Valentina interjected. Baba Alina from 13B. She only exists on alternate Tuesdays and during major holidays. Makes excellent cookies though. Speaking of which, she produced a tin from somewhere within her numerous shawls. Cookie? Zac looked at the cookie, then at the missing wall, then at his phone where Mark was still having what sounded like an existential crisis. Through the ceiling panel, he could hear the distinct sound of cats attempting to harmonize with a kazoo version of Bet on It. He took the cookie. When in Kyiv, he muttered to himself, just as Larissa began explaining the concept of temporal displacement insurance, and Baba Luda started rearranging his ceiling ropes into what she claimed was ancient Carpathian storage pattern, very good for positive energy and sock organization. Little did he know that this was just the prelude to the afternoon's adventures, which would include an impromptu building committee meeting in his kitchen, still featuring the central toilet, a visit from Boris and his entire feline choir, and his first encounter with the infamous time-traveling Baba Alina, who, as it turned out, had some very interesting stories about his future in Ukrainian real estate. By early afternoon, Zac's apartment had transformed into what Larissa enthusiastically described as most exclusive meeting venue in all of Kyiv. The missing wall had indeed returned, though it had somehow brought extra flowery wallpaper with it and was now sporting a pattern that seemed to move when you weren't looking directly at it. The building committee arrived in waves. First came Boris, the kazoo-playing cat conductor, wearing what appeared to be a vintage Soviet orchestra conductor's uniform modified with LED lights. Behind him paraded 7 cats, each wearing tiny bow ties and carrying miniature kazoos in their mouths. They are still learning high school musical repertoire, Boris apologized, as one of the cats attempted a wobbly version of Getcha Head in the Game on its kazoo. Very challenging for feline musicians. Many complex emotional nuances. Next arrived the building's maintenance supervisor, Pavlo, who introduced himself by emerging from the kitchen sink in a cloud of pipe smoke. Plumbing inspection, he announced, before settling into a lawn chair he'd somehow produced from his tool belt. Also, very important committee vote today about installing disco ball in elevator. Could improve mood during breakdowns. The apartment quickly filled with an eclectic array of residents. There was Mikola, the death metal drummer, who apologized for his quiet practice session the night before. Usually I use bigger drums, but was late, didn't want to disturb. The mysterious DJ from the 5th floor who only played polka remixes of 80s power ballads. A woman who claimed to be the building's official historian and insisted on documenting everything with a camera that looked suspiciously like a toaster. Just as Larissa was about to call the meeting to order, using a gavel that doubled as a bottle opener, there was a shimmer in the air near the kitchen toilet, and an elderly woman in a floral dress that seemed to be from several different decades at once stepped through what looked like a tear in the space-time continuum. "Baba Alina," everyone exclaimed. "Sorry I'm late," she said, brushing what looked like stardust from her sleeve. Time machine had hiccup. Kept stopping in 1987. Though I did pick up some excellent recipes for Olivier salad. She turned to Zac with a knowing smile. "Ah, the American actor. I remember meeting you next Tuesday last month." Before Zac could process this temporal paradox, Larissa called the meeting to order. The agenda, written on the back of what appeared to be a Soviet-era movie poster featuring a cat riding a rocket, included such items as: vote on mandatory kazoo hours, Boris and his feline orchestra abstaining. Discussion of ghost unionization efforts, Thursday ghost demanding better haunting conditions. Proposal for installing a waterslide between floors, Pavlo insisting it would solve the elevator problem. Debate on whether time travel should be restricted to weekdays only. But first, Larissa announced, we must discuss very important matter of new resident." She gestured dramatically at Zac. As per building tradition, he must now perform traditional ceremony of acceptance. "What ceremony?" Zac asked nervously. Baba Alina patted his hand. "Don't worry, dear. I remember you doing it perfectly next week. Though you might want to practice your hopuk dance before then. And maybe learn to juggle pickled vegetables." The building historian raised her toaster camera. Mykola readied his drums. Boris directed his cats into formation. Pavlo began unfolding what looked suspiciously like a small trampoline. Just then, Zac's phone rang again. It was Mark. "Zac, the studio executives are flying in tomorrow. Please tell me you're somewhere normal." Zac looked around his apartment. Boris's cats had begun a kazoo rendition of "Breaking Free," while performing synchronized swimming movements in the air. Gravity seemed optional in this building. Baba Alina was casually knitting what she claimed was next year's scarf. The wallpaper flowers had started swaying to the music. "Define normal," Zac replied, just as Larissa handed him what appeared to be a ceremonial tracksuit made entirely of sequins and decorated with traditional Ukrainian patterns. "The ceremony begins at midnight," she whispered excitedly. "When the kitchen wall usually goes for its evening walk. Very auspicious timing." As he slipped the phone back into his pocket, ignoring Mark's increasingly desperate pleas, Zac realized that his method-acting research had taken an unexpected turn. But as Baba Alina had apparently already seen, he was about to become part of something much bigger than just researching a role, assuming he could master the hopuk dance and pickle juggling before the ceremony began. As midnight approached, Zac stood in his sequined ceremonial tracksuit, which Larissa had proudly announced was made from finest Ukrainian disco ball material, very traditional. The apartment had been transformed. The ceiling ropes now formed an intricate canopy decorated with dried herbs and what appeared to be glow-in-the-dark vegetables, while Boris's cats had arranged themselves in a perfect circle around the kitchen toilet, each holding a tiny glowing kazoo. "Remember," Baba Alina whispered, materializing beside him with a plate of cookies that she claimed were baked yesterday. "Next week, when Wall begins its evening walk, that's your cue. Just like you did next month." "But I haven't," Zac began, before being interrupted by Larissa's dramatic entrance. She had outdone herself this time, wearing what could only be described as a leopard print ceremonial robe with built-in disco lights and shoulder pads that could have doubled as satellite dishes. "Places, everyone," she called out, clapping her hands. The lights flickered in rhythm, courtesy of Pavlo, who had rigged the electrical system to respond to what he called ceremonial frequencies. Mykola took his position behind a drum set that seemed to have materialized from thin air. The building historian readied her toaster camera, now adorned with ceremonial ribbons. DJ Polka queued up what he promised would be most epic remix of traditional Ukrainian folk music and high school musical soundtrack, never before heard in this timeline. As the wall began to shimmer, preparing for its evening constitutional, Baba Valentina and her fellow interior decorators began a traditional chant that sounded suspiciously like "We're all in this together," in ancient Ukrainian. "Now," Larissa announced, "the ceremony of residential acceptance begins." What followed was a blur of activity that Zac would later struggle to describe to his agent. He found himself performing a perfect hopuk dance, thanks to muscle memory from lessons he apparently would take last Thursday, while juggling jars of Larissa's grandmother's mysterious pickled vegetables. Boris's feline orchestra provided musical accompaniment, their kazoo rendition of "Getcha Ahead in the Game" somehow blending perfectly with traditional Ukrainian folk music and a thumping disco beat. The wall, seeming to appreciate the performance, delayed its evening walk to sway along, its flowery pattern forming what Baba Luda swore was standing ovation in wallpaper language. Time seemed to flow strangely, which, according to Baba Alina, it actually was. "Very good temporal distortion," she approved, checking what looked like a pocket watch but might have been a small time machine. "Almost as good as when you do this next week." At the ceremony's climax, Just as Zac completed a particularly impressive combination of dance moves while balancing a jar of pickles on his head, several things happened at once. The Thursday ghost, much more fashionable than the Monday ghost, as promised, appeared to sign off on his residency papers. Boris's cats formed a perfect pyramid, playing the opening notes of "Breaking Free" on their kazoos. The kitchen toilet, not to be outdone, performed what Pavlo described as traditional plumbing celebration, creating a fountain display that somehow spelled out "welcome" in both English and Ukrainian. And finally, the wall returned from its brief evening stroll, bringing with it a new section that contained an actual window, though this window seemed to show different weather and occasionally different decades depending on who looked through it. "Congratulations," Larissa declared, throwing handfuls of what looked like glitter but turned out to be tiny copies of the building's extensive rental agreements. "You are now officially accepted resident. With all privileges and responsibilities." "Responsibilities?" Zac asked, still catching his breath from the hopuk. "Oh yes," Baba Alina nodded. "But don't worry, you handle Tuesday ghost rotation very well next month. And cats love your kazoo lessons in alternate timeline." Just then, Zac's phone rang one final time. It was Mark. "Zac, I'm begging you. The studio executives are on their way. Just tell me you're somewhere that makes sense." Zac looked around his apartment. Boris was teaching his cats a new arrangement of "Bet on It," while Pavlo explained his plans for the interfloor waterslide to the Thursday ghost. Baba Alina was simultaneously knitting scarves in 3 different timelines, while Larissa was already planning next week's building committee meeting, which would apparently feature a debate on whether time travel could be used for better pizza delivery. The wallpaper flowers winked at him. "Actually, Mark," Zac replied, accepting a cookie that Baba Alina had brought from next Tuesday. "For the first time since I got to Kyiv, everything makes perfect sense." And somehow, in the most wonderfully bizarre way, it did. He had come looking for an authentic experience for his role, but he had found something far more valuable, a place where reality was optional, time was flexible, and every day brought a new adventure, usually involving cats, kazoos, and at least one ghost. Besides, he added, as Larissa began distributing what she called ceremonial after-party tracksuit uniforms, now with extra sequins, "Wait until you hear about the waterslide." The end.
Tell us in the comments what part of this story impressed you the most. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the world of incredible events.